Welcome to InspireWord. It's Saturday, and we've got a really special guest today. I'm actually wearing a tie in honor of him. I can't wait for everyone to meet with him and hear his words of inspiration. But first, we want to thank Catholic Order of Foresters and Solidarity Health Share for their continued support of allowing us to bring these incredible inspirational messages into your living rooms. Also, please chat on the side. Please leave messages and comments and questions for our guest, Kevin Reilly, today, as he will be sharing his life story as well as his advice and words of inspiration on motivation and overcoming adversity, which when we started InspireWord, I must say this is a guy that is the essence of what we are trying to achieve when it comes to showing folks, keeping things in perspective, having a grit type of attitude toward life, and most of all, keeping God in the center of all that. So without further ado, I'd love to bring in our guest for today, Kevin Reilly, former NFL football player, motivational speaker, author. Kevin, welcome to InspireWord. How are you?
Joe, I'm really happy to be on with you, and can't wait to talk to the audience today, especially during this little bit of challenging times that we're having right now. And I'm sure a lot of people are kind of pent up and looking for some inspiration. So, you know, I'm able to do whatever you ask me to do, and let's get the interview started.
Well, the reason people love it, and again, thanks to you and Paula Reilly, your beautiful wife, for inviting us into your home there and allowing us to have some one-on-one time with you. Speaking of challenging times, we're going to get to that, but can we start with maybe the beginnings of your story into you making the NFL career? Just kind of give a background of who you are and how you become what you become.
Well, you know, as a kid growing up just outside of Philadelphia in Wilmington, Delaware, I was a big Eagles fan all my life. And, you know, back in the day when there weren't 300 channels on TV or the internet, it wasn't unusual for a guy like me to go out in the backyard and pretend with a ball, you know, waiting for 20 minutes, maybe for a ride somewhere to practice or something. And, you know, I feel bad for the kids today because with all of the technology that's out, you don't see them pretending as much as we used to back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And, you know, pretending was another way of dreaming. You didn't necessarily tell people what you were pretending about, but you always pretending you were the hero in something. And so if you take that as a basis for that someday, some way, somehow, you know, it might happen to me. And then here I am, I get drafted by the world champion Miami Dolphins, make it down to the last cut. And I'm so disappointed, I can't even tell you, because they had just won a Super Bowl in 1972. By the way, the last undefeated team in the NFL for an entire year, the Miami Dolphins of 1972. They repeated in 73, and I was the last player let go. But, you know, there's always a silver lining to these things, Joe, and I got picked up on waivers by the Philadelphia Eagles, my hometown heroes. And then I got to play special teams. I was captain of special teams. I happened to play linebacker, but I played behind this guy named Bill Berge. He was pretty good, all pro, and will someday be in the Hall of Fame. And it was just a dream come true. So that's painting the picture. I'm 23 years old. I'm living in Philadelphia. I'm playing in my hometown in front of the home fans. You know, I'm 6'2". I weigh 235. I have a 400-pound bench press. Life doesn't get any better than this.
Yeah, well, I can imagine that. I mean, I've never gotten that far on the bench press, but you know, that's why you're an NFL player. I mean, those guys are just specimens of human beings when you reach that level. So kind of walk us through, was the adversity or kind of the mental mindset you had to have when getting through those challenges, maybe as you were getting into the NFL and things that you learned when you started playing in the league?
Well, I got to play 3 full years in the league. I got credit for a fourth because of, you know, an injury I suffered, which led to the amputation of my left arm, left shoulder, and 4 ribs. This is a prosthetic device here, Joe. If I'm ever in a fighting bar in Philly, I'm leading with this shoulder. It's made of Kevlar.
Yeah.
I want you to know. But, you know, being a professional athlete, and I'll just be honest, at 25 years old and being in your hometown, I was larger than life for a while. And, you know, you're riding this high, you know, ride through life and everything's going just like dream world. And then all of a sudden, due to the injury I had, I developed a tumor in my left shoulder and nobody thought it was serious. But after I saw 9 doctors, one of them up in Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York City, figured out it was a very rare scar tissue called desmoid. And it was very, very bad. And if they didn't get it out, it could actually take your life. The problem with it was it was a scar tissue that kept trying to repair a rotor cuff area that I had when I was playing. You know, playing special teams, you didn't tell a lot of people you were hurt because you might get replaced. So I kept it under wraps a little bit. And trying to get this thing taken care of, I end up, finding out that it's a life-threatening, operation I'm going to go under. It's going to be 11 and a half hours, and I'm not going to be able to use my left hand. The only good news out of that is I was right-handed. So, here I am waking up in a hospital bed after 2 days of intensive care, missing my left arm, shoulder, and a couple ribs. And boy, the thoughts come pouring through. I had a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and an infant, and I'm looking at their pictures and I'm tearing up, and I'm starting to put the pictures down saying, what am I going to do for a living? Will I be around to see them graduate from grade school or high school? Those kind of things went through your mind. Did they get all of the tumor? If they didn't, do I go on permanent disability? Do I get a job behind? Who will be able to see me in public? All these things. And remember, I just didn't fall from the general population of average guy. I fell from being a very proud professional athlete, proud of my body, proud of my reputation. It was quite a blow. And it was during those hours that I really had to come to terms with who I was as a human being.
When you had to, and that's really interesting, because that's probably the point where when your back's against the ropes, you probably started doing things that, by the grace of God, that you didn't even know you were capable of. From these experiences, Kevin, I want to jump into real quick, talk about the book you wrote and where folks can find that book, the inspiration behind the book, and what you hope people walk away from reading it. And then we'll get into the inspirational part where you can share your words of wisdom. But talk to us about your book. I think it's a book that's called Tackling Life that you wrote. What was the inspiration behind it, obviously, and then what do you hope people walk away from after they read it?
Well, I did some broadcasting for Villanova, and I told the president up there, who I'm friends with, Father Donahue, that I wanted that C in English changed to an A because I wrote a book. And, actually, this Tackling Life was a result of following a lot of my speaking engagements, which I do all over the country. People would come up to me and ask me if I had tapes or if I had a book. And finally got to the point I said, let me give it a shot at doing the book. And one of my best friends, John Reilly, sat down with me, and I told the stories and he cleaned them up, and we got some advice from good people. And I've sold over 5,000 copies in just the last 2 years, and it seems to have a really big impact. My speech lasts about 40 minutes, so this is the rest of the story. And a lot of people get a lot of insight because they can relate to some of the challenges. See, sometimes God just doesn't give you one big challenge in life. You might get 2, you might get 3, you might get 4. But I found out that once you go through the first big challenge, you follow a couple guidelines that I put through in the book. And the subtitle of the book is Faith, Family, Friends, and Fortitude. If you can develop those 4 things, you can just about handle anything, including the coronavirus.
All right. Well, speak out. It is. It's a very inspirational book. Where can people get it and find it if they were interested in getting it?
You can go on Amazon Books and you can purchase it there, and it's on sale right now for $20. And if you'd like to message me on Facebook, you can do that, and I will send you an autographed copy, and I'll personalize it for you and send it to you. So you can get it 2 ways. And I think if you have anybody that's going through a tough time, I've had people that have, and I've gone down to Walter Reed Hospital in Maryland to counsel some of the volunteers, some of our greatest heroes down there, Joe. And somebody finds something out of here that gives them a little spark, and I'm just happy to be able to contribute.
No, that's awesome. Well, we're talking with Kevin Reilly today. If you're just tuning in, Kevin's a former NFL football player, motivational speaker now, and author. You can find and connect with him or book him for speaking through CatholicSpeakers.com, as well as find his book on Amazon. Kevin, if you don't mind, we'll switch gears a little bit. Let's enter the locker room, which you're so used to, and kind of talk to families, young people that are watching right now that are going through adversity they never expected. Maybe related to the tumor and it taking your arm, and something that you didn't expect. and how you took, as they say, lemons and turned it into lemonade. And what was the mindset? What would the mindset you get to tell people?
Well, I'll take you right into the locker room because I want to get across two things. Number one is I was in three locker rooms: the Dolphins, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the New England Patriots. And I think it pretty much still happens today, maybe a little more so, because as the broadcaster for the Eagles, I was in the locker room. It's really funny, Joe. Right before we go out on the field, the head coach, no matter who it was in those three organizations, the last thing they would say, let's sit down and say a prayer. And everybody would hold hands and we'd say the Lord's Prayer. Now, mind you, there were non-Catholics, non-Christians in the room, but you're so scared and you're so anxious before a game that this seems like the right thing to do. And it's very comforting. And I take it from that aspect to say a lot of people that I played football with, it's a little bit like the armed forces, nothing really like them, but a little bit because you form a brotherhood. And the first time that I was having the worst day of my life up there in Sloan Kettering, as I had just come out of intensive care and wondering about the rest of the world, I got a call from a guy by the name of Rocky Blyer. We were friends, but we were more brothers NFL-wise than we were friends. And he talked me down off the cliff and told me that I was going to get by this. And he told me it would be my faith, the people around me, and my family that would develop the fortitude I would need to get through it, and that I had to believe it. And I did believe it. And he said this little poem to me, and he said, commit this to memory because you're going to need it, and say it 1,000 times. And it went like this: if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost a cinch that you won't. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You got to be sure of yourself before you can win the prize. Remember, life's battles don't always go to the biggest, fastest, or strongest man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who the man who thinks he can. And I have said that several times, hundreds of times, and then thousands of times to get across little barriers. And if I could just show you one little barrier that I got across, a very well-intentioned volunteer came into my hospital room during that fateful day. And he was one of the guys that depressed me, although his idea was to help me. His name was Frank. He was missing an arm, and he was giving me all of the information and all of the expertise I would need now that I was handicapped. And that word hit me in the middle of the forehead like a 230-pound running back on an isolation play. I wasn't ready for that lady. I was a former football player. 3 years ago, I was tackling O.J. Simpson, John Briggins, and Joe Namath. And now I'm in here, and they're telling me I'm handicapped. I have one arm. And he said, one thing I'd never be able to do, he said, if you're going to have to get dressed up and go back to your job at Xerox, where I worked for 30 years, he was asking me what I had to wear. He said, you're going to have to get clip-on ties. And I said, Frank, why would I need clip-on ties? And he said, you'll never be able to tie your tie again. It can't be done one-handed. I've been trying for over 30 years. And at that point, Joe, I was really glad they didn't ask me to pull on his finger. But when I pulled on my tie, it came off. Pulled on his tie, it came off in my hand. And he said, if you're going to have to wear a tie to work, and I guess you will, you're going to have to get these clip-on ties. And I said, why? He said, you'll never be able to tie your tie again. It can't be done one-handed. I've been trying for all my life. So if you use my name and go down there and give them my name, they'll give you a 20% discount. Well, needless to say, Flyer got a hold of me. He said, I want to see you tie your tie the next time we talk to each other. And I made sure, because he would look me up, that I could. My whole point in this is the human spirit is stronger than anything that can happen to it. And you got to believe it. And in our Christian world, it's real easy to put the human spirit and call it the Holy Spirit. I think if you believe that you can do something and you give it your best effort and you say some prayers, you'll be surprised at what can happen. There's an old saying that says, man would be surprised how many things are wrought through prayer. And I believe that. Kevin,
that was awesome. You totally just retied it and tied it while you were talking there, right in front of everybody. I was half expecting you to ask me to try and do it with you, but I'm glad you didn't, because I would have a knot maybe. I mean, what you're sharing with us and what you just did is a demonstration of human will and I can do attitude is just beyond inspirational. We got to text message in here from William out in Florida. He asked, have you, at the time when you were going through the strife with losing your arm, were you ever mad at God? And if so, how did you overcome that?
You know, I never got mad at God there. In my book, you'll see that I take people through three big problems in my life. Number one was losing my arm. And I was so motivated after Rocky and a couple other people talked to me. I wanted to show people what I could do with one arm. And I had perspective. It wasn't my dominant arm. My right arm was my dominant arm. So I started to look at what I had, not at what I didn't have. And boy, that makes a lot of difference in the whole world. The other thing I think is really important is that you've got to do what you can do. There's an old saying, God will help you move mountains. Just make sure you bring your own wheelbarrow. And I took that to heart. And I said, that is something that I'm going to have to try. I'm going to make sure that I try everything and see how I can do it. I play golf now. I play better than I did with two hands because I'm slowing down the game a little bit. I've actually, broken 90 on 2 occasions. But the other two things that came, I never blamed God there because I figured this could have happened to anybody. I'm not a special person. But I'll tell you what happened. After 20 years of marriage, my wife left me. And that's where I really challenged, why would this happen to me? I had this great Catholic family. Why would God let this happen to me? And that lingered with me for a while until I finally got over that. And last but not least, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I'm not proud of the fact that I was an alcoholic, but I'm recovering now. But I can tell you, it was really tough for me to say that I'm never going to drink again because I enjoyed drinking. So those are the three big things that I got over. And I'll tell you, when this epidemic came, this pandemic, I hear a lot of people complaining, oh, I'm all cooped up and everything. Perspective. Perspective is everything. The night before my operation, a man came into my room down the hall, elderly guy, I say elderly, 65 years old, third operation. And he said, can I give you some advice because I know you're nervous? And I said, sure, I'd love some. He said, listen, are you in the best hospital in the world for what you have to have operated on? I said, that's what they tell me. He said, and you do have the best orthopedic surgeon in this hospital. I said, yeah. He said, can we make a stretch and say, hey, maybe he's the best orthopedic surgeon that could do your operation in the whole world? I said, yeah, I can't deny that. And he said, 11 guys that you played football with caravanned up here yesterday, the nurses told me, to give blood because you're going to bleed out during the operation. And I look around the room and I see all those cards and letters and people that are praying for you. He said, listen to this. You got the best hospital in the world, the best doctor in the world, friends and family praying for you, giving blood for you. And if you're in other parts of the world, you may never see a doctor, Kevin. Think of what you have. And that made me stand up and say, you're right. Tomorrow, I'm going to have an optimistic attitude when I go into this operation. I'm going to have one when I come out. Thank God for Rocky Blyer because he gave me the boost that I needed. And that's how I got on with it. And I think we need to look at perspective of how bad things could be if we weren't home right now, hunkered down. That's not so bad.
Wow. Yeah, Kevin, talk about mental toughness real quick. What you probably had to go through your professional career and most importantly, your personal life. What would you say to folks watching this right now that they hear these types of things? They think, yeah, but I lost my job. I have challenges. I don't know how to feed my family tomorrow. Talk a little bit about mental toughness and what you've learned at the highest level from a competitive athletic position.
Well, I found out that you just don't know, again, going back to you just don't know what kind of strength you have until you're put up against the world and you decide you're going to try to fight your way out of whatever battle. And I think the biggest word I can use here is persistence. There are so many guys that I saw in the NFL that the first day of camp you go, oh my goodness, he's struggling and he's never going to make it. And then by the end of camp, you see this guy that was a free agent, undrafted, probably wasn't even a star in college, but somehow his 40 time got him into camp and he picked up everything because he was there with the right attitude to get by it, and he made the team. And then you'd see somebody that was really blessed with talent and had an injury that just didn't have the guts and the grit to fight back and to get over that injury because they had been given so much. and they washed out of playing in the NFL, always to talk about what could have been. And that's the only thing I can tell you is that, once again, God will help you move mountains. Just make sure you bring your own wheelbarrow and try to go through it yourself. And you'll be surprised when you push yourself to, I can take another 20 yards in this distance run, or I can take another 2 hours of work and make sure that I get my job done and I make that bonus for my family that's so desperately needed.
Right. And along with that, I want to pop up another question. This is a VIP, Kevin. This is actually grandmother married to my grandfather, Mary Lou Donahoe. I asked her, they're all, I got a lot of family tuning in. They love watching these things. She wanted to know, there's ever a time that you felt sorry for yourself during, and how did you recover from that, if so, in going through this? Thank you, Mary Lou.
You know, one of the things that I promised God, I'm Irish. And, you know, when I was going into that room, that operating room, the priest who had given me communion in the morning was by my gurney going in. And I said, Father, what are you doing here? You already gave me communion. He said, I'm here to give you the sacrament of the sick. Well, nobody had informed me that there was a 30% chance that I, wouldn't make it through the operation. And just then my doctor showed up for me to sign that release form. Well, I want to tell you, when somebody tells you there's a 30% chance that you're not going to make it through the operation, it's like Johnny Carson said, I did not know that. And I want to tell you something. Everything that I ever thought of, that materialistic that I thought was important, vanished like a fog in front of me. Because the only thing that mattered to me during the next 3 minutes, what was my relationship with my Creator? Because there was a 1 in 3 chance I was going to face him. Yeah. And man, I said the act of contrition upward and backward. And I remember saying this. I looked up in the heavens right as they were wheeling me into the room, and I said, Dear Lord, you pull me through this, and I will pay it forward like you can't believe. I want to tell you, that's been one of the biggest blessings I've had, is paying it forward. Because when you are helping other people, it is the greatest satisfaction you can ever acquire. And I guarantee you this, you will see people and you will help people that you think maybe I wouldn't be able to overcome that. And it humbles you. It humbles you never to feel sorry for yourself, because there's always somebody else that's a little worse off.
Right. Well, we're talking with Kevin Reilly today. Kevin, thanks again for taking the time to invite us into your home and share your words of inspiration. People watching, if you want to see this interview as well as many others, go to inspireWord.com. Everything Kevin said today, his links to his book, everything will be posted there, as well as we'll try and get that awesome, I guess called a poem that you recited earlier on in the conversation. We'll get it posted up there for folks.
Without a doubt, it's in the book too. So
awesome. Kevin, kind of to close it out, kind of just, there are people out there hurting. And when you, like I said in the outset, when you talk about the essence of what inspireWord is all about, is the type of stuff you've been through and you've overcome and turned into a positive. What are some final thoughts that you may have on what you think you would tell somebody sitting at home right now watching this kind of grasping on for any kind of inspirational thought?
My biggest challenge is the kids, Joe. And so to get through to the kids, because I'm 69 years old, and I know when they first see me, they're thinking, oh, what's this old fart going to tell us? And so one of the things I do is I go through a gospel verse when Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. And, I really didn't know what that meant until it was explained to me by one of the Augustinians up at Villanova. But if you take a look at this is the greatest invention technologically ever made. It can take you anywhere in the world with GPS. It takes pictures, it takes videos, it calls people. We're doing what we're doing right now. You and I did FaceTiming. It's great. But you know what? If it's not plugged in, it's a paperweight. And so what Jesus is saying to us, and especially during this pandemic, and maybe it's one of the reasons we're being hit with it. I hate to think that God would send something like this, but what that means is God's asking us to stay connected. He's going to say, I'm going to throw some barriers at you. I'm going to throw some obstacles at you, but believe in me, have faith in me, and just keep connected. Just keep plugging me into me. Just keep plugging in. I know you're busy, but if you make it a daily routine or a weekly routine or a couple days a week routine, it's going to work for you. Because at the end of the day, I can tell you from being on that gurney going into that room, There was only one thing that mattered with me. What was mattered to me? What was my relationship with my Creator? And I believe this, that if we do things for other people, we'll never feel like we should be sorry for ourselves. And there's only one thing that God really, really loves in all human beings, and that is what we give to others. One of the great cardinals once said, the only thing that we take with us when we die are what we give to others. And then for your own sake, make sure that you can do the best job you can with the talents God gave you. Remember this, and I'll close with this. There may be no such thing as magic, but there are miracles. And they happen to Catholics in this country every single day. Thanks, Joe, for having me.
Kevin Reilly, you are one great American. Thank you so much for your words of inspiration. The comments are pouring in, how you've already touched folks. Again, if you want to see this interview, it'll be posted on inspireWord.com. Please share it with your family and friends. We got Father Larry Richards joining tomorrow. Please tune in live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Kevin, thanks again. God bless you. And we look forward to working with you. And I see you got that Super Bowl ring on. Is that what that is?
No, it's just an NFL ring.
Oh, gotcha.
It's an alumni ring. After they beat you up for 4 years, this is what you get.
Yeah. Well, you've earned it. God bless you, my friend. God bless your work. And we'll look forward to working with you and hopefully sending you out to many communities, in the years to come.
All right. Have me on anytime, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. God bless you.